Hello, everyone, and thank you for dialing in today. My name is Jennifer Bunting. I'm the Asia Pacific Head of Content Marketing at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, based in Sydney, Australia. Today's webinar is all about content marketing trends in Australia. So if you're working on your content marketing strategy for 2017, then the research findings being discussed today can help you develop a powerful plan based on macro trends in our industry. We are thrilled to have Joe Paluzzi with us. Joe is the founder of the Content Marketing Institute. He's a best-selling author and a content marketing thought leader. He'll share the results from the content marketing budget, benchmarks, and trends for 2017 for Australia. Now, every year since 2010, the Content Marketing Institute has conducted this global research to uncover trends, challenges, and tactics used by, or being faced by content marketers. The conversation today will focus on those trends specifically for Australia. I'll pass the mic over to Joe now, but first I just wanted to let everyone know that we'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation today. So simply post your questions in the Q&A module. We'll get to as many of those as we can during our allotted time. And I also invite you to answer a few questions at the end in our survey so that we can get feedback on the webinar for you today. So without further ado, here's Joe.
Jennifer, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my favorite topic, content marketing, but specifically to Australia. And so Jennifer, you mentioned we've been doing this for the last 7 years, and specifically for Australia for the last 4 years. And I love research, so I'm so happy we're going through this. And thank you for everyone on the call today for taking the time. As Jennifer, you mentioned, I'm Joe Paluzzi. I'm at Joe Paluzzi on Twitter, and I've written 4 books on content marketing, the latest 2. So if you are in a larger enterprise, Epic Content Marketing is more for you. If you're a small business, Content Inc. is more for you. But basically, I go around traveling all over, including Australia, Singapore, around Asia. Not as much as I used to, but I just like to spread the gospel of content marketing and talk about it as much as we can. So you're going to have me, like it or not, for the next almost hour as we talk about this going forward and all the trends in content marketing. I want to start out with this, maybe one of my favorite infographics, if you will, if this is an infographic, because it's the reason why you're on this webinar today. If we look before 1990, consumers had 8 different ways, just 8 different ways that they could get information. And that means as a brand, as an enterprise, you had 8 ways that you could communicate information to try to sell them into your products and services, if you will. But if you go on to 2016 and beyond here, your customers, your consumers, have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways that they can get information. And that means they don't have to look at our advertising anymore. They don't have to get the information from our, let's say if you're a B2B company, from your salespeople. They can get this information themselves. You know this. And that means that what the opportunity here is amazing. We can communicate directly with our audience today, but we have to create valuable, relevant, and compelling information on a consistent basis in order to do that, and that's where we get to content marketing. So just a little definition to sort of set the table for content marketing. There's a lot of formal definitions. We have a lot on our site, contentmarketinginstitute.com. But I want to focus specifically on building an audience because as you'll see throughout this survey information, this research information we'll talk about, building audiences is key to figuring out how are we going to persuade people, how are we going to get people to know, like, and trust us. So the idea behind content marketing is we're really looking at, for the most part, owned media. And how do we create valuable, relevant, compelling information on a consistent basis to a target audience so that they do something? And that last key is important. That's why we do marketing, because they actually have to maintain or change some behavior. And we believe at Content Marketing Institute, and I think the research plays this out, that if you build an audience, you have a much better opportunity to actually profit from your communications and your content marketing. So we're really going to get into that. So as we start, I'm just going to start first. I've got a bunch of different charts that I'm going to throw at you. I'm going to try my best to make sense of these as they go. But the first charts here are all about just different benchmarks and where we are at in the content marketing industry as it pertains to Australia. So I'm just going to start here, and then we're going to go into content creation, budgets, distribution, and promotion, and then I've got some tips and trends and just some of my thinking that I wanted to take away from all these research findings that you're going to go through today. So, just percentage of Australian marketers that use content marketing, I have to put it out there, 82%. So 8 out of 10 of you are doing some form of content marketing. Now, I have to say that I don't believe that 8 out of 10 people are employing the approach of content marketing. I believe that 8 out of 10 Australian marketers think they are. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. But when they answer the question, do you use content marketing, and we define it very similar to the way that I just defined it a few slides ago, 82% say that they actually use content marketing. Now, if we go deeper into the concepts here, I love this idea, and we've been asking this for a couple of years now about their level of maturity and where they think they are at on the continuum of how far along are you at in the approach of content marketing. So we know that 35% are sophisticated or mature. So most of us are just getting started, and this is really important to look at because even though content marketing has been around for well over 100 years, and if you ever listen to Robert Rose and my podcast every week, This Old Marketing, we've talked about some examples of content marketing that go into 300 years old. But for most of us on the call, this is a relatively new muscle that we're getting to use, and that's why when you see some of these findings, you have to keep in mind that this is not like advertising. This is not something that we're really used to and we understand the metrics associated with it. This is still a relatively new concept in creating your own valuable, relevant content to a targeted audience, so we have to keep this in mind as we go forward. When we look at the organizational structure in Australian enterprises, most of us just have a small 1 or 2 person team. And again, that goes back to that we're just getting started. I mean, if you look at, for our big event, Content Marketing World, the majority of people that come to that event every year in the States in September have content marketing titles. They're content marketing manager, content marketing director, VP of content. Those are all new titles. This is a very new thing that's going on. So while some of us, 23%, have some kind of a centralized content marketing group, most of us are just 1 or 2 person marketing departments. Now we're going to get to what an effective content marketing program looks like. And this is actually, I've got to tell you, I got to give bow down a little bit to Australian marketers because you do it much better than we do in North America. So your number here is much higher, but still a little disturbing if you think about how many of you have a clear sense of what success looks like for content marketing. 49%, so just a little bit less than half. So most of us out there don't have an idea of what it takes to be successful with content marketing, you should be scratching your heads right now just listening to me talk about this because this is a problem. Like we don't want to employ and create and distribute any content unless we know what we're trying to do and what success looks like. Remember, we have to begin with the end in mind. So what is the end look like so that we can set up the processes to move forward? Commitment level. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on commitment level because it's really important. So in September, just a few months ago, at Content Marketing World, my opening keynote was all about commitment level and how important it is that an organization has to be committed to content marketing. And I'll talk at the end because I'll do a roundup of what does a successful content marketer look like or a successful Australian organization look like when it comes to content marketing. And this is one of those key areas. So what we found here is that if we look at extremely committed, it's just 17%. And honestly, I don't look at any of these other numbers with a grain of salt because it doesn't matter to me. If you are not extremely committed and you're just very committed or somewhat committed, then you're not committed, folks. Anybody on this call that's been in a relationship before, or maybe you are right now, you know that there's one level of commitment. You're all in, or you're not. So we've got to, and this is where we're at right now because we've got a lot of people dabbling with content marketing, and I call them dabblers. And we got to really focus on is commitment level. So I've got this outlined a little bit for you to keep this in mind, and this is why every day, if you are involved in content marketing in your organization, that you have to sell the practice of content marketing. You have to do it every day because the people that you are reporting to and working with aren't familiar with the practice of publishing amazing content every day, the practice of content marketing. So if you let off the gas a little bit with commitment, you will lose it. And you will not get your organization to focus on it, and they'll go do something different, and they'll focus on campaigns. Content marketing is a marathon and not a sprint. It takes time to do this, and you have to be committed at it. And a lot of you might think, hey, this is not a big statistic. I think this might be the biggest statistic we found in the survey, that we know that this is tied directly to success, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Just a little promo here. If you have people in your organization that don't understand content marketing and you're really trying to push that boulder up the hill and you need help, this is why we created this documentary called The Story of Content. If you go to thestoryofcontent.com or go to Amazon Prime, you can get access to The Story of Content, and it's 43 minutes long. Just take the person that you report to, lock them in an office, make them watch it for 43 minutes, and I guarantee you will be better capable of doing your job after they watch this than before. All right, now back to the survey. So factors contributing to Australian marketers' increased success over the last year. So one is better content creation. We're becoming better at this because we've been doing it longer. We're more sophisticated, as we talked about a little bit ago. So we're setting up processes. We now have resources, so that makes a lot of sense. The second one, really important, a lot of us actually have strategies now, because in the past, if you look at the previous few years of the benchmark report for Australia content marketing, we weren't creating strategies. We still aren't creating as many as we should, but we weren't creating strategies. So those first two are very key. And by the way, you all know this, but if you want access to these slides, the full research as you go, you can find them on Content Marketing Institute.com under our research tab. But I'm going through some of the key highlights as we go. Okay, for those of you that aren't finding success in content marketing, what are some of the things that are holding us back? Not enough time devoted to content marketing. And folks, if you believe you don't have enough time to devote to content marketing, you may not be all in committed to content marketing. Remember, we make time for things that are important, and if content marketing is important to you, then we've got to make time for it. And I get it, right? Nobody has enough time. Nobody has enough resources. Nobody has enough budget. But it's a little bit concerning to see this one at the top. We have to make time for this, and it goes right into the second one. Content marketing not prioritized highly enough. And this is why I just keep banging the drum on. You've got to sell this every day, and you've got to make sure you report your progress to the people that you're reporting to so that they start to buy in. Somebody asked me a question. I did a presentation last week on content marketing, and somebody asked the question, hey, what do I do with somebody in my organization besides showing them the documentary that don't get it, that they don't buy into it? And I would say every week, if you can, send them a great example of content marketing. Send them what your competitors are doing. Let them see what's going on. Let them see the content creation that's happening in key companies that they respect or respect around the world. Those are the things that they're going to start seeing, and then you mix that in with what you're doing, and it'll make some major impact. We just talked about this. It's a little bit concerning here. Percentage of Australian marketers who actually have a documented content marketing strategy, so written down, 44%, so less than 50%. So that means 56% of us either have something in our heads or they don't have a strategy. And this is an issue, right? So if it's not written down, it's not real. You have to write down your strategy. You need to share it consistently with your team, and you need to adapt it as it goes depending on what kind of data you get in. That's the best way to do it, folks. So if you actually don't have your content marketing strategy as part of your overall marketing strategy written down, you need to do that right away. We have plenty of resources out there at CMI to help you do that if you need to do that. Now, if you have a strategy but you just haven't written it down yet, you have to go ahead and write that down, and then you have to make sure you get your team involved in it, and that means the sales team needs to know, the customer service team needs to know, the IT group needs to know. So we need to make sure that we get those stakeholders involved in the meeting so they know what's going on. Okay, so that was sort of, here's the state of the industry. Now I'm going to get into some different aspects of it, and I just have a couple slides here on budgets. So the average Australian company spends about 30% of their marketing budget on content creation and distribution efforts. If you're looking at what's the difference between what's going on in North America, it's almost identical. The North American study is 29%. So again, this is not including staff, but you could just say 3 out of 10 Australian dollars are going for content creation and distribution efforts. If you want to look at trends in budget over time, we asked those taking the survey, over the next 12 months, are you going to increase your budget, keep it the same, or decrease? 47% are increasing, so that's fantastic. 42% remaining the same. So you're going to see flat to up budgets in content marketing. It's still one of the fastest growing areas, if not the fastest growing area of internet marketing. So it's really interesting to see more spending go on in this area. Okay, so now I want to unpack some of the specific ones related to content creation. So compared with last year, so let me go back to that budget, right? You saw that 47% were going to increase, less than 50% are going to increase their budget. Way more than that, companies are going to create more content. So about 70%, 7 out of 10, are going to create more content. I love that. Don't you love that? It's like, no, you don't get more budget to work with, but you're going to have to create more content, or you're going to create more content. And I think one of the things that are interesting that we keep seeing, and when we go meet with enterprises around the world, that more content isn't necessarily better. So this is a little bit concerning. I mean, it's fine. Great, more content. If it's valuable, relevant, compelling, and targeted, it's fine. But still, a lot of people are under the belief that, oh, we need to create more content, we need to do more in social, instead of having that strategy and that cadence and frequency that actually makes sense. So just, you may, depending on your overall strategy, you may come to a decision and say, well, maybe less content, more impactful content is better for me. Which content marketing tactics does your organization use? The average Australian organization uses 8 different tactics. Social media, so basically distributing some kind of valuable, relevant, compelling information through social channels is the number 1. Number 2 is email. You're going to see a trend on that one. Email is throughout the next few slides, so get ready for that one. In-person events are always at the top. Remember, this is not just digital. We're talking digital, print, and in-person as well, and then blogs and videos kind of lead the top 5. Most critical channels for success over the next 12 months, number 1, email newsletters, number 2, blogs, and then number 2, social media content and blogs. All right, so I've got 2 slides that I'm going to talk about distribution, and then I'm going to go into a little bit about email. So now we're talking about distribution of content. What channels are Australian marketers using? The number 1 to distribute their content, email, 92%, LinkedIn number 2, Facebook number 3. The average number to distribute content is 5. And this is not paid distribution. We're going to talk about paid promotion in a little bit. This is more organic distribution we're talking about right now. How important is each channel to the organization? By far and away, email is the most important, LinkedIn, and then print, which I love to see because I'm a print guy. So everything, when we look at integrated content marketing approaches, we really are seeing the most sophisticated Australian marketers use print, in-person, and digital components. So it's not just everything in digital. We really are seeing full integration. But by far, number 1 of importance is email. Now, we talked a lot about email, and I just want to digress and give you an example here about what we're seeing globally when it comes to email, and I'm going to pick on our friends at BuzzFeed for a second. Now, whether or not you've engaged in any content at BuzzFeed, I'm sure you're way too sophisticated for that, but let's just say for the sake of this example, that you would gauge or you know the type of content that's on BuzzFeed. So I don't know if you've read, so basically a billion-dollar valuation company, they've grown their audiences on the back of social media, specifically Facebook, for a long, long time. But if you look at their latest earnings report, it's not so good. It didn't come out so well. Well, why is that? And if we really look into the numbers, what you found out is they weren't getting the type of organic social media distribution that they used to, specifically from Facebook. And so what is the executive team at BuzzFeed doing? They're freaking out, folks. They're like, oh, my gosh, we have all our audiences built on platforms that we don't have any control over, specifically Facebook. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? And so for the last year, they've been focusing on creating new, targeted, informative e-newsletters. So they've more than doubled the number of e-newsletters, and they're doubling down even on this one. And by the way, did you know that if you want to get a weekly email newsletter just about cats, you can do that, which has to be like the greatest content on the planet, right? But you can actually get an email newsletter just on cats, and BuzzFeed will give you that. They have signed up more than 1 million people to their email newsletters in the last 12 months, and they've just started to get working on this. So just to keep thinking about it, you've got a big movement from a lot of these social channels, and they're not moving away from the social channels, but they're saying, look, we've got to diversify, and we've got to make sure we've got this touch point directly with our customers in the form of email. So this is my very sophisticated yay-boo scale when it comes to subscriber hierarchy. And by the way, if you look at anything here on the left-hand side of the screen, it's all good, folks. Everything on this screen is good. I mean, I want a Facebook fan. I mean, I feel good when I get a fan on Facebook. It doesn't do much for my business, but I feel good about it. Let's look at YouTube. Let's say that you have a video channel. You've started on YouTube, and somebody comes to your YouTube page and they actually subscribe to your video series, and you're really excited, and you're like, hey, the next time they go to YouTube, they're going to see my videos. Well, not necessarily, because YouTube can change their algorithm, and they're really trying to sell more advertising, so they don't necessarily have to show your video. That's the point I'm trying to make is even though you make a connection, you can't control the content going to them, and you certainly don't own the connections. So we still want to use those channels if they make sense for us, depending on what you're trying to do, but we want to move up the chain so that we can have more control over our distribution of our content, and right at the top is email. And, of course, you saw that. A lot of you that took the survey in Australian marketing organizations, you're seeing that you're focusing on email, but maybe we're not focusing on exactly the type of email that we want to send out. So I'm going to get to that in a second. So before I go on to the next parts of the survey, I want to stop here because it's important. So BuzzFeed has lots of e-newsletters. New York Times here in the States, I think they doubled the amount of e-newsletters, the same for Washington Post. We're seeing e-newsletters take off. But you're probably saying, Joe, come on, email is dead. I get up in the morning, and I go through, and I got 100 spam emails, and I got to delete all those spams. But you have 1 or 2 emails probably every day that you don't delete, that you absolutely engage with, that you save for later because it's that important. That's the type of email newsletter you need to have with your audience. So I'm going to ask you, do you have an amazing e-newsletter? Is it truly amazing? Is it truly remarkable? Is it truly helpful? Because most of the e-newsletters that I see, not just coming out of Australia, but coming out of anywhere, are sales-related. They're more talking about our sales or our products and features and not talking about the needs of the audience and not audience-centered. So I want you to think about that because if you don't have an amazing e-newsletter, you're probably not going to break through, and it's probably not going to work for you, and it's not going to work for your customers. So we've got to make sure, we just saw for the last how many slides how important email is, but we've got to make sure that we execute that promise as well. And, of course, we need some kind of exchange of value as well. You need some kind of ebook, a research report, a white paper, so that they can download and actually exchange their real email address with you and not like stop spamming me at gmail.com, right? You want an actual real email, and you've got to make sure you deliver some value. So you need an amazing e-newsletter and some exchange of value to make this thing work. All right, so now we're going into promotion. and this is specifically on paid promotion means to get your content out there. Okay, so what paid methods of content marketing are Australian marketers using? And the number one is social advertising, social promotion. So we're taking our content, we're putting it on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, and we're distributing that content that way. And this is not just, it's not over for products and services, it's for content. So valuable content, not sales-related content. And then print and search engine marketing are tied for the second. And we're using about 4 of these as we go. Most effective. So what's the most effective paid methods for content promotion? Tied between search engine marketing and social promotion. So it's interesting that you're talking about pay-per-click, folks, and a lot of people think that pay-per-click, that we're only really promoting our product and service. People are ready to buy, but a lot of people are at the top of the funnel, and they're looking for information, and that information might be yours, and that might be your white paper or your research report or your ebook or something like that. So the only two that are over 50% right now are search engine marketing and then social advertising, social promotion of your content. And then next we've got native advertising, and then we've got print. So really what this tells us is that if you're looking for best in class, and what we're seeing, we're looking at search engine marketing, and we're also using promoting our content through social. All right, so now I'm going to go through a bunch of results on what we're seeing with best-of-breed marketers in Australia when it comes to the approach of content marketing. Okay, so organizational goals for Australian content marketers for the next 12 months. Number 1 is engagement, 2, lead generation, 3, customer loyalty. But all the way down at the bottom here is subscriber growth. I'm going to talk about this in the end, but we're not seeing as much focus on subscription growth as we are on engagement and lead generation. And really, when I talk to Australian marketers, they're talking most about I need more leads, I need more names. What do? I do really like much higher than we're seeing in North America is your focus on customer retention loyalty. So I love to see that. And again, when we go into which metrics does your organization use to determine how well you're doing with content marketing, number 1 is website traffic. Now there's 2 things you want to look at with website traffic. First of all, website traffic, you can get to say anything you want to. It is something we can measure, which is why most of us measure. We can actually go to our Google Analytics or whatever analytics you use, and you could say, great, it's going up and to the right. Yay, we're awesome. And the same thing with social media sharing. These are things that we can count. So, of course, they're up, and that's what we're using from a metric standpoint. But then again, 4 out of 10 of us are looking at subscribers. And I'm going to focus on this in a little bit, but I think that we're missing out on something important when we look at our overall results for our content marketing. So which metrics are you using that provides truly measurable results? The number 1, again, back at the top, is website traffic. Sales lead quality, I like to see that. Higher conversion rates, I like to see that. Sales, it's sort of a mishmash. We're really doing a little bit of everything, and we don't have this. I think this tells us that we really don't have this figured out, and everybody's using content marketing for a different purpose, which is fine, right? Where we're using it for, are we driving sales? Are we saving costs? Are we creating happier customers? Those are the only 3 ways to look at it. And when you're looking at your overall results and what you want to see happen, remember that the Chief Marketing Officer only wants to know 2 things. Are we driving revenue or are we saving money? That's it. So in some ways, so if you're looking at that website traffic as the most valuable thing, you better be able to show that more traffic is going to get you more money in some way. And that's why we really go to the email subscription as something that you can really look at, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, buyer's journey. So this again, we're way at the top of the funnel. So if you look at the top, this is your lead generation. A lot of the awareness stuff that you saw before. So most of us are really, and by the way, you could answer more than one. Like, where are you focusing at in the funnel, in the buyer's journey? So 51% at the top, you got 31% in that messy middle, that's lead nurturing area. The 51% for the bottom of the funnel, I'm not as concerned with that for this because that's a lot of your product content that we're focusing on, really close to point of sale. But the 28% is a little bit bothersome because that's that customer retention. That's the post-sales. And if you were just starting out in content marketing, I would say start out with the customers that know you. Start out there. Start out with your current customers. Don't start out with people that don't know you. And that's why if we look back at the tradition of content marketing, the majority of what content marketing was all around loyalty and retention. It's all about loyalty-driven print magazines for the most part and events. And now that's changed a little bit, and we've moved a lot of our focus up to lead generation, and I think we've missed a little bit when it comes to opportunities. So you might have an opportunity that you're missing to focus on, hey, how are we communicating with our current customers, and can we get them to talk more favorably about us, maybe better for cross-sell or upselling? And then, of course, 24% don't measure. And I don't know really what they're doing, but they're not measuring their content marketing. Okay, so this is sort of my overview slide when it comes to what is the difference between a sophisticated and mature marketer, content marketer from Australia, and sort of the other lesser mature, let's say it. And so what do we see is, if you want to be on the sophisticated, mature level, we want to be very committed. We're extremely or very committed to content marketing. We are clear. I'm going down the list. So the first one was 91%. The second one down, I'm going all the way down here with the boxes that I have around this. They're clear on what effectiveness is. So first, we want to be all in, and we want to commit to content marketing. Second, we want to have an idea, at least, what's going to make us successful. How does it look like? What does success look like? The third one is the overall, they believe their overall approach is extremely very successful. So we're sort of communicating that back with the leaders, with your leader, like, here's what we're doing. This is really important as we go. The 71%, the fourth one down, has a documented content marketing strategy. Critical. Look at the difference between those first steps that don't have one and those that do have one. It's huge. So if you can just write that down, share it with your team on a regular basis, you are going to see improvement. Absolutely. I love this one, the second one from the bottom. Agrees that organization is focused on building audiences. That's so critical. Building an audience is so critical. An audience that knows, likes, and trusts is so critical. And then the last one is we actually create different content from our competitors. So if you asked me, Joe, what are the two critical areas that Australian marketers fall down with generally? One is they don't tell a different story, and two is they don't deliver consistently. So those are the two things we want to keep in mind as we go. So I just kind of love this overview slide that absolutely you're going to get to keep. So as I wrap this up before we get into Q&A, I've got one little section I want to talk about really focusing on platform, and then I'm going to talk to you about one trend for 2017. So if you said, Joe, looking at all this research, I threw out a bunch of numbers at you, but I want to just simplify this before I say goodbye, and this is the question that you need to be answering in your organization. This is the money question, because all we want to know is, if I deliver content to somebody, what's the difference between those that engage with my content, subscribe to my content, and those that don't? What's the difference? Do they buy more? Do they stay longer? Do they talk more favorably about our company? That's going to end up in more revenues or cost savings. That's all we want to know. What's the difference between those that subscribe to my content and those that don't? This is what we really want to focus on. Now, we've got to make sure, first of all, that we build up the process. First, we have that different story. You need to be telling a different story, but then we've got to set it up correctly. So this is what we look at as the base. So as you know, we've been doing all this research with ADMA, now LinkedIn this year. It's been fantastic. But if we really go and look at, okay, what are the greatest examples of content marketing out there, and what are they doing? This is what they do, folks. What a lot of us do when we get a good story idea or maybe a campaign, we're like, I want to distribute this content everywhere, as many places as I can, as often or infrequently as I can. And that's not a winning formula, folks. What is a winning formula is this, and we call this the base. So if we're going to start out and actually build a platform where we can draw on an audience, we're looking at one content type One main platform, consistent delivery over time. So one content type. Is it audio? Is it video? Is it textual plus image? One main platform. Is it my blog or website? Is it YouTube? Is it LinkedIn? Is it iTunes? Consistent delivery. Let's say that you have a blog and you are delivering your blog 2 times a week. And I say, well, which 2 days? You're going to say, well, when any 2 days. I'm going to say, well, you're already messing up the process. You have to be delivering Tuesday at 7 in the morning and Thursday at 7 in the morning, and you're going to keep doing that every day for however long it takes until you get data that's going to tell you it's not working, and then long period of time. So that's why I say that content marketing is a marathon and not a sprint. If you say, Joe, I love this content marketing thing, and I've got 6 months, I'm going to say, go do something else. Go buy advertising. Don't waste your time with trying to build a long-term relationship with somebody, and then you're going to give up on that. So these are the 4 things. And by the way, if you look at any great media company, the greatest media companies of all time, they all did the same thing. This is the so even though we talk about content marketing as this new thing, we're really talking about building a media platform, because we want to build an audience from that platform. The audience is the asset, not the content. The content gets us the audience. Remember that. The audience is the asset. The content gets us the audience. That's what we want to focus on. So just a couple of examples here as we talk about the base. If you look at a company like a copy blogger, Brian Clark started this blog in 2006, I believe. And this was a textual plus image content delivered on his own website, his own platform. He delivered consistently 5 days a week, and it took him 19 months to monetize. And now he's one of the fastest-growing software as a service companies. He's got well over 200,000 email subscribers. But that's the same thing. It's the same thing when we talk about the base. If you look at a video example, Jyske Bank Television. Jyske Bank is one of the largest banks in Denmark. They started a video. By the way, that picture is of their bank. They actually have a tagline that says, "We're the only media company with its own bank," which I absolutely love. But they used video. They used video on their own platform. They delivered multiple times a day, and it took them about 24 months to really see impact. And now this is how they go to market. They built this. They're one of the leading financial news media sites, and they're not in the news media. They're a bank. And then here's a podcast example, or an audio example. So John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, he started with audio content delivered via iTunes for the most part. He delivered every day, and I'll talk about that in a second, over time, and it took him between 9 and 12 months to really monetize it. Now he's a multimillionaire. He's traveling all over the world. He's fantastic. I was guest number 1154 on his podcast. Up until that show that I was on, 1154, he delivered every day, 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time, every day until the podcast that I was on. Now, I'm not saying you have to go daily, folks, but I'm saying this is the process that works. Now, of course, are we going to distribute some of these things and promote them on LinkedIn, on Facebook, if it makes sense? Are we going to cut these up and repurpose them into different things? Absolutely, but I'm talking about where is your home base? Where is that platform you're going to build? And this is what we see as successful. So again, one content type, one platform, consistently delivered over time. I can't drill this into you high enough, because what I see so many Australian marketers do is they get a really good idea and they're like, oh, we're going to do a podcast of it, we're going to do a video of it, and we're spreading content everywhere, but we're not focusing on delivering a consistent, truly valuable experience on one platform. And folks, you have to choose. It's called strategy. You actually have to choose. So before I bring Jennifer back and talk about Q&A, I've got this one trend that I want to talk about, because I've been talking about it for a long time, and we're finally starting to see it come true. So you can take all this information and you can tweak your strategy, which hopefully I've given you some information to think about documenting your strategy, and maybe talking about the importance of email and email newsletter, or whatever you take away from this. and you can absolutely build your platform and build your own audiences. But you can also buy them. You could actually go out and make a list, and this is what we see a lot of Australian marketers doing. Last time I was in Sydney, I actually had a meeting specifically on this with a medium-sized company that was like, hey, this is the audience we're targeting, and we were going to build this thing. And before we built, we're going to make a list of who are the bloggers, who are the media sites, who are the influencers out there that actually have already built an audience that we could actually buy. And some of these deals are actually a little bit smaller than you would think of. They're not all like super multi-million-dollar deals. Some of them are quite reasonable, so I think any company can do this. And before we were purchased by UBM, we were a relatively small company, and we actually did this 3 times, and it worked really well for us. So just a couple of examples. JPG Magazine. In 2008, 2009, they were a website, media site dedicated to photography enthusiasts. So they were giving how-to information for photographers to be better photographers. If you remember, you had the Great Recession in 2009. Wasn't going very well for media companies. JPG Magazine couldn't find people to advertise on their site, even though they had 300,000 subscribers to this site. So like, what are they going to do? They were ready to go bankrupt. Nobody was going to buy them. Adorama comes along. What does Adorama do? They sell photography equipment to photography enthusiasts. That's exactly JPEG's audience. They bought them. They put a buying group together. It's been a match made in heaven ever since. Many of you are familiar with HubSpot. HubSpot had a sales blog. They had a marketing blog. They wanted an agency blog. They're like, what are we going to do? They went out and bought Agency Post, and now they completely integrated Agency Post into their website. And then this one, this is our parent company, UBM, Content Marketing Institute's parent company, UBM. They went and sold a good portion of their electronics media portfolio to Arrow Electronics. Arrow Electronics is a global electronics manufacturer. They're one of the 200 largest companies in the world when it comes to this, Fortune 200 company. And we've talked to them over there, and they're like, they are building platforms in certain markets, but they're trying to speed themselves to market, so they bought these assets, and they are building a full media portfolio to dominate this industry by communicating amazing information and creating great experiences to their audiences. So before we get to questions, I just want to leave you with this. If you decide to do this, and you have the patience to do it, and you're going to build this in your company and make sure you get everyone on board, you got to remember that you have to create value for your audience before you extract value. And there's so much of this when we look at with lead generation specifically, that we try to take that value, we try to sell too quickly. And sometimes it takes time, and that's why you have to build a subscriber relationship and multiple subscriber relationships with an audience, especially on the B2B side, before you actually go and start hitting them with sales. So just something to remember, that maybe if you're struggling with your overall content marketing approach, maybe you're trying to extract that value too soon, like, oh, I got the email address and I'm going to send it right to sales, and they're going to call you 10 times or email you 10 times. Probably not a good way to do it, and if we just are patient and we focus on the process, sometimes we'll reap better rewards with that. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation. I know we've got some questions coming in. So Jennifer, I'm going to bring you back on the call, and I'd love to go through. Oh, by the way, that's all my contact at Joe Polizzi. You can ping me on Twitter if you need anything, and I'm joe@contentinstitute.com if you want to email me. But Jennifer, do we have any questions?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the feed, but first I just want to thank you for being on the call with everyone in Australia and beyond. We have other callers and dialers in from across APAC as well, so thanks for the time. Love the case studies as well on top of all the data. We have a lot of questions in the feed. Probably can't get to all of them, so I'll just kind of look through here and pick some of the most similar or frequent ones we've got. The first one is, with so many marketers measuring ROI based on lead generation, how do you recommend marketers decide when to gate versus ungate their content?
All right. That's a good question. So we're talking about gated versus ungated, and it's interesting and this is, by the way, this is not just an Australian issue, folks. This is a global issue because I get this question all the time when we do our master classes. The first thing is you should absolutely have gated content, but it's probably a very small portion of your overall portfolio of content. So if we look at all of our content marketing out there and we said, okay, that's 100% of our content, how much should be gated? It would be definitely less than 5%. It's probably more like 1 to 2% that's gated. What you really need you need very specific assets. These are probably ebooks, white papers, research reports. Research is great, that you would have actually gated to try to give people something that they can download so that you can get their email address and sign them up for your email newsletter. That's really what you need it for. I've seen some really successful companies with their content marketing approach just have 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces of gated content, and that works really well for them. Now, I totally get where we're at with lead generation, and you've got salespeople on you, and they're like, I need more leads. I want the Glengarry leads. What are you going to do for me? So what we're seeing a lot of companies do is they're saying, okay, we're going to do a really amazing, remarkable ebook or white paper every quarter. And then we're also seeing, let's say, 1 or 2 a quarter. We're seeing some kind of a webinar program so that they can get those leads ongoing. But when you're driving people to your website, let's say you have a blog, that you have that as a call to action. You're not driving people to your demo or your product and service. You're driving them to your gated product that you can get their email address and then add them to the list, as long as you explicitly say that in exchange you're going to sign them up for the list and you get this ebook. So I would just say maybe do an overall audit of sort of your content assets and where they're at right now, because if you have way too much gated content, you don't have enough free ungated content to actually get them to the gated stuff. This is why associations are really struggling right now, because they have a lot of their content behind a gate, behind a membership form, and they don't have enough free content available for people to get into the free stuff and then decide, hey, I want to actually download and get my information over to this company. So I would just take a look at whoever asked this question, take a look at the amount of gated content you have versus ungated, and you definitely want those remarkable pieces, but make sure you have enough ungated that's free-flowing, consistently delivered, whether it's through a blog, whether it's integrated with a podcast, video, whatever the case is, so that you can deliver that ongoing experience just like a media company would.
Awesome. Thanks. Hope that answered his question. The next one we have is, how do you assign value to building an audience base? If it's not a lead, how can marketers explain the value of a follower or a fan to their board or internal stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you got to remember that when you get a name, let's say for a webinar or an ebook or research report, it's not a lead, it's a name. And a lot of us think that's a lead, and we shove it right into sales, and we don't even think about it, and then the salespeople get upset because it's not a lead. It's just a name, and that lead wasn't ready to do anything. We haven't nurtured that lead at all. So what we really want to do is we want to get that name. So get that name, and then we go to work on it, right? Then we're going to deliver really valuable information. That's why I love an email newsletter, because if you get somebody to subscribe to that, then you can start delivering a regular email newsletter to them. You don't call them. You're not hitting them with sales stuff yet. You're just delivering them value so that they start to know, like, and trust you. Then you can start to score that. And then you can look at if you use a marketing automation system or not, or you can just start to look at in your email system, oh, they're starting to open emails. They're starting to click on this stuff. And then whatever your scoring is, then you can start to get them to a point where it actually becomes a lead. So I would say look at your leads coming from your subscriber base. And if you can start to do that and change the mentality of your organization, you'll be way ahead. And now that's a tricky situation, so you might still have to, it's going to take you some time to get to that, because if you delay that a little bit, you're going to have a hole in sending that to the sales team. But you've got to make sure that if you can start to build this up and really nurture those names, and then you get them to sales when they're ready to be delivered to sales, you'll be vastly better off. So think about subscribers first and then leads coming from subscribers.
Excellent. I'm nodding along with you here, but no one can see that. Not on video. I'm going to skip to another question. You've touched on this a lot, but kind of taking it from a different approach. One lady's asking, do Australian marketers, do you find them over-reliant on email as a distribution method?
Well, if you looked at the research, Jennifer, and you could see it, right? Everyone was focusing on email. So it's sort of, I'm gonna switch it up, because I would say, yes, we're reliant on email too much, but we're using it wrong at the same time. And most of the marketers that we talk to, and when we do a content audit and we really look at what they're distributing through email, it's not very good. It's usually very sales-driven. It's usually not audience-centered, and it's not consistent. So it's not a consistent email newsletter. And even if it is consistent, it's not very good. So yes, we're relying a little bit too much, and we're killing that channel because so much of us are destroying our relationship with our customers through it, or we've already gone to spam. Like it's like I've talked to so many companies, Jennifer, that are out there. I'm like, oh, what's your open rate? And they said, oh, it's like 0.5% or 1% or 2%. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And they're like really happy about it. I'm like, no, that's not good. Like we need to be up in the 15, 20, 25% open rate, where they really want to get our content. They get excited when we deliver that into the inbox. So I would say for those listening, I would add, and it's a hard thing to do, but I would ask you to rethink how you are sending your email. And are you just spamming people, and is this just a short-term thing where it's going to fizzle out, or do you really have an opportunity to build a relationship through an email newsletter that's differentiated? So that's a couple different steps. First of all, are you delivering really good, valuable information? Then you got to change that story if you're not, and then you've got to deliver it consistently. Is it a daily newsletter? Is it a weekly? Is it a monthly? What is it? You got to deliver that consistently. Now you can still send sales emails, but I like the examples where you actually wrap the sales around the email newsletter so that they know that it's coming from you. It's brought to you by you. You can put in your latest white paper, your ebook, your latest product, a coupon, whatever the case is, but they're still getting the really good, informative email information from you.
Awesome. And I know it's still early days as you're putting the research together, but do the Australian marketers use email more or less than the U.S., or is it still kind of too early to draw that conclusion?
It's actually, what's funny, Jennifer, it's almost exactly the same. It blew me away throughout all the research is how much we're focusing and relying on email. But so it's good and bad. I'm like, I see that stat, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like they're really focusing on it. Email is not dead, but we are crushing our customers with really bad email at the same time. So we've really got to be careful. If you're going to use it, you've got to use it properly. And we can be the ones, if we do it right, you can be the ones to cut through all that clutter, and everybody else is going to hurt their relationships with their customers.
Gotcha. Excellent. So switch gears up a little bit. There's another question here. What's your recommendation around an always-on strategy versus bursts with social media?
Oh, I have a very particular point of view with this one, Jennifer. I would say if you're making a promise to your customers to deliver content marketing, by the way, you don't have to do this. Like nobody has to take the approach of content marketing. I mean, I still love advertising, still love PR. There's nothing wrong with doing those things. Do I think that content marketing can make your advertising and PR better? Absolutely. Do I think that it's important to build audiences? Absolutely. But you don't have to do it. So I would just say if you're going to do it, if you decide to do it, let's just do it correctly and do the approach correctly, and that means you've got to deliver consistently. And it's exactly like what media companies have been doing since the dawn of time. Like you don't say, so let's say you get the morning newspaper in print still, and it's like, oh, I'm going to deliver it on Sunday, but no, I'm not. We didn't get around to running the presses on Monday, so then we'll do it on Tuesday. And then, oh, well, Bob was off the rest of the week, so we're not going to send it the rest of the week, and maybe we'll get back to it on Sunday. That's what brands do. Media companies don't do that. And that's with digital or with an event. It's almost like, oh, we're going to set up an event, and then we're not even going to hold the event. And everybody's there stranded. That's sort of what we do with our digital content. So if you're going to do it, deliver consistently. I believe the same thing as with social. So if you're going to leverage LinkedIn and you're going to say, look, we're looking at the data and we know we're going to deliver these 4 times a day, we're going to do that consistently, and then the rest is used for conversation and customer service and replying and all the wonderful things that social is good for. Now, if you're going to deliver on social, deliver, keep that promise, and because it actually absolutely still does work, and we see that with media companies, we see it with great content marketing examples, and just these short burst campaigns. Can they work? Absolutely. Yeah, sure, they can still work from a traditional campaign, but if you're talking about from a content marketing approach, we've always seen that consistency always on works.
Excellent. All right, I think we have time for one more question, Joe. This is kind of an interesting debate we've heard with clients, actually, so it's interesting to see it in the feed here. What's your take on the difference between social media promotion and native advertising?
Oh, well, this is right up your alley because you guys do a lot of work in this area. Look at it's when we first started, and I first started to look at the term, because native advertising is a newer term. And as we first started to look at native advertising, we looked at native advertising as anything that's similar to what you're getting in the feed. So that would be if I'm doing a LinkedIn ad and it's in the feed, it looks and feels just like the regular content, that would be a native advertisement content. And then so that's the one kind. And then you also have the type of content where I'm almost like an advertorial on a media site. So I'm the publisher of this digital website is giving us space to say our message, and it looks and feels like an article. So I would say that we're starting to see people call the first one, where it used to be called native advertising, just social promotion. And we're sort of getting into semantics, and maybe it doesn't even matter. But when I think of social promotion, I'm thinking of, just like I talked about in the beginning, I'm going to deliver a piece of really valuable content in the social, in the LinkedIn feed. I'm going to pay to do that. I'm going to boost that. That makes sense. Great. I'm going to get deliver on whatever goals that I have. Or I'm going to do a native advertisement on some other website, and that's going to be a longer form piece of content that I have some point of view around. So I don't know if you're seeing the difference or what you're seeing in Australia. We're seeing that in the States for sure, where they're not really saying as much, I'm going to do native advertising and I'm going to use a LinkedIn or another social site. They really are starting to look at native advertising as a longer form piece of content that looks and feels like regular media content versus the social promotion that would just be the social advertising. So I don't know if you're seeing anything different, but that's sort of what we're saying.
I think just in conversations I've had with clients, it's kind of synonymous in some cases not. So that's why it's interesting to see it here, because some clients think they're the same and other clients see that distinction you were saying about like a longer piece of content. Interesting, there's a native advertising conference later this week as well, so I'm sure that question will come up in that space too.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, the words don't matter. What does matter is if you're going to employ either one, you do it consistently. Like the thing that I think kills everything, it's like, we're going to try it out, we're going to test it, and we're just going to do one. No, if you're going to really do this, run it like a content marketing approach. Like if you're going to pay for it, do it consistently, have a program, have a thought of what type of content you're going to deliver, and then make it work for you instead of just, let's just test it out like we've normally done with advertising. And I just think there's a better way to do it.
Gotcha. And so I think kind of then to wrap things up, it sounds like the major takeaway for marketers as they read through the full findings and watch the webinar today, it's really that consistency matters in order to build that trust over time.
Yeah, it's consistency for sure. I mean, that's where most Australian marketers are dropping the ball that we saw, especially with the qualitative information. And then you've got to make sure that if you're actually going to take a content marketing approach, your content has to tell a different story. It actually has to be differentiated. You can't be talking about the same things that 7 or 8 other companies are talking about, because you're never going to break through the clutter. And it's a really hard thing to do, so you have to spend some time with your strategy, figure out, document that strategy, and then consistently deliver on that strategy. That takes time, and what we've seen is if Australian marketers do that, they will be successful with their content marketing.
Gotcha. Joe, love this. This is such great research. I know it's going to be helpful for myself as we're building our 2017 strategy here at LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot of people who've dialed in are feeling the same way. So thank you again for dialing in. And where can people download the full report again?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for that. So go to contentmarketinginstitute.com and then just click on the research tab or /research, and you'll see all of the North American research, the B2B and the B2C, and then you'll see the Australian research right there on the top.
Cool. Thanks, Joe, and thanks to everyone for dialing in today.